Okay, so that was the trailer for the PBS documentary, The Librarians, which aired this year in February. It's still available through PBS Passport or for free on Canopy or through your public library. Well, Canopy is through your public library, and you can also see it on YouTube, which is where I saw it. Today, we're going to talk with Julie Miller, who appears in that film. But before we do, I want to say a few things about what's been happening locally. My sources for today are the American Library Association, PEN America, which is a leading literature and free speech organization, and the Florida Freedom to Read Project, which is a parent-led nonprofit that was organized to fight censorship in schools here in Florida. Following a 4-year campaign to remove books from school libraries, book banning has now become rampant and normal in the US. Even more troubling, under the guise of protecting children, the bans have disproportionately targeted people of color and books with LGBTQ characters. One parent in Texas put it this way, quote, "I don't want my kids to think that being gay is normal." I was curious when we got ready for this service today to learn more about what was happening right here in our own backyard. And what I found was that in Florida, we've been the #1 state for book bans for the last 3 years. Clay County, just to the south of us here in Duval, 2 years ago banned more books than any other county in the United States. Their total for all 4 years now stands at 758 books. Duval County has so far permanently removed 78 books from its shelves. This is mostly because of a new Florida law which has mandated a review of all materials. School staff face third-degree felony charges if they distribute any books that are deemed harmful to minors. In St. Johns County, the number of books removed so far is 78. In Nassau, it's 117. If Crystal has that slide, here are some of the books that have been banned locally. Now, I know there's a lot in Clay County, but these have been banned in all the counties locally. They include This Book is Gay, The Children's Story and Tango Makes 3, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and The Handmaid's Tale. And Julie has actually brought us more books that you can see up front here that were banned where she lives. It's ironic to me that The Handmaid's Tale has been banned because it's a dystopian novel about an oppressive, totalitarian regime that practices censorship. To us as UUs, book bans are generally not a good thing. The purpose of education is to expose children to ideas that make them think and help them understand that the world that they're living in. This aligns with our UU principle of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Our children should enjoy this freedom and this responsibility. Children's books can be windows into other worlds and sliding glass doors that their imaginations can walk through into those worlds. Books can also be mirrors that reflect the whole of human experience back to kids, so that children from dominant social groups realize the larger community that they are part of, and they don't develop an exaggerated idea of their importance. These are the words of Rudine Sims Bishop, a children's literature professor at Ohio State University. In 1990, she said, quote, "When children cannot find themselves reflected in the books they read, they learn a powerful lesson about how they're devalued in the society of which they're a part." Well, so the good news is, and we'd like to hear some good news, number one, we can vote. In Duval County, I was shocked to learn that 5 out of our current 7 school board members were endorsed by Moms for Liberty. This is a right-wing extremist group, that's the Southern Poverty Law Center's words, not mine, that is responsible for many of the book bans that have been sweeping our nation. We can also donate to organizations that lobby against book legislation, books bans in Florida. They lobby against book ban legislation in Florida. Thank you. There were 3 bills defeated this year because of groups like Florida Freedom to Read, PEN America, and Unite Against Book Bans, which is a group that was organized by the American Library Association. And finally, 3, we can speak out at school board meetings when we disagree with a book removal. I'm pleased now to welcome Julie Miller to our church. Julie was reassigned from her job as a Clay County High School librarian after she questioned the book bans that were happening there. first we need our microphones. Are they? Can you hear them? Oh, good. Okay. Thanks for coming. This was just really such a treat for us.
Thank you for having me. It was really beautiful to see all of the children up here. Wow, some amazing answers from them too about some of those Shel Silverstein poems.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me.
So I want to start off just by hearing your story. Tell me about yourself. Why did you become a school librarian? Why was that important?
I think I was a child librarian, you know, like I stamped all of my books at home with McCoy Library and was always very organized about how things were. I was a voracious reader. Roald Dahl was one of my favorites, like Matilda, Babysitter's Club, Goosebumps, all the good stuff. So I think it turned me into an English teacher first, and then after a few years in that, I really wanted to get into library world, and after some academic library experience, I found myself finally as a librarian at Ridgeview High School, which is in Clay County.
And I think you said that was your dream job.
It was. I was 33 when I started there, and was like, this is finally it. This is what I was meant to do. This is like my purpose, is to do this because I'm able to create an environment for students at school that maybe don't have their place. Maybe they're not band geeks, which self-identified band geek, so I'm not like dissing anyone here, or a jock or whatever. It's a place where everybody was welcome. They could come get what they needed. That there was an adult who was like a safe, accepting person that is not assigning any grades to them, and just providing their needs with resources or with whatever else I could do.
So talk to me about the issue of book banning. When did you first become aware that this was an issue? What happened?
Well, it was actually a book that was in my library only in Clay County that was the first one challenged or questioned, really. In November of 2021, my principal called me in about a book called All Boys Aren't Blue, which is a memoir written by George M. Johnson, who is a queer black person who writes about their experiences growing up. There is some sexual discussion in the book, but he prefaces it very carefully to explain why he feels that it's important to provide that information. And it is written for a teen audience, which is very clearly stated. And it's won a lot of awards. It's a beautiful book. I cried when I read it. But there was a complaint. My principal called me in. Do you know about this book? Sure, I do. And she said, well, there's complaints, and did you know this was in the book? And did you know that the Florida statutes say this and that? And I'm like, no, I didn't know these things. I haven't read the book at that point yet. But we do have a process for this. I'm not just going to go back to the library and delete it. So let me read the book. I'm going to email you the information about the process, and we'll go from there. I read it and said, I think it fits with our collection development policy. I think it's age appropriate. And she said, well, I disagree, so I'm going to challenge it. So she filled out the paperwork to challenge it, held a meeting. It was not the policy that the district had in place, because everyone should have read the book first. I mean, kind of an obvious. But instead, she provided them the 5 pages that were objectionable, along with the Florida statutes, which are misleading, and then asked them to vote right there on the spot. Which I think one thing that we've lost the plot here when it comes to books with objectionable content is Yes, sometimes books are going to have things in them that are uncomfortable, that are outside of what we feel comfortable with, especially if we're thinking, oh, this is for children. A lot of times it's not actually written for children, it's written for teens. But if we, for example, if you take Michelangelo's David, great piece of art, right? Beautiful sculpture. If we zoom into one specific area on that sculpture, you might be tempted to say that's pornography. But when you zoom out and look at the whole thing in context, it's art. So I think that's one of the things that is really important when we're talking about literature, is to consider the context.
Yeah, and then, and just so I'm clear, that was the got brought before the school board, the person who was challenging it. I might have missed what you said there. Was that a parent
So
that was issuing the challenge?
that specific one, there was never any actual complaint that was named.
Okay.
It came to the district gave it to my principal.
I
My
see.
principal decided to challenge the book.
So then after that happened, initially, things escalated from there. Can you sort of describe generally where things went from there, and especially what were some things about it that really struck you as unusual?
Well, first of all, when that happened, we had not seen a book challenge of any kind in decades. So this was all new territory, basically. So everything was quiet the rest of that school year, and then that summer, I went and spoke at a school board meeting, and happened to be the same school board meeting that a certain gentleman who has since then challenged over 1,500 different titles in our libraries. He spoke there for the first time that night as well. And I feel like I went into the whole thing very naive, if they'll just listen to reason, then they'll understand that this is a misunderstanding. People are getting the wrong idea, and I just need to correct some of these logical fallacies that are happening. And so I go with the best of intentions, and I'm like, don't worry, guys, you can just talk to us, and we can get through this together. This doesn't have to be a big, dog and pony show in front of the school board. I even went and spoke to him after the meeting. And
This was the man who challenged the books, the
Yes.
1,500 books, yeah.
yeah, and at that point, he'd basically just come up in front of the school board and said there's a bunch of pornography and this Hustler magazine in the libraries, and yeah, and he brought a school science project board where he had passages from 3 different books that he didn't like, and he stood it up in front of our chief academic officer, and it was very dramatic. It made lots of news, but then the next thing I know, he's wanting to meet with me, and he's also emailing me articles in which he's said that the media specialist at Ridgeview High School was buying books without reading them first, and he wasn't ready to get the gallows out to see me swing.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting because I remember you telling me that he, in his communications, targeted you specifically.
Yeah.
And that you did feel threatened by some of the things he said. Can you tell us more about what that was that he did?
Sure. As the challenge forms came in, which we weren't given, as the actual media specialist librarians weren't often showed the actual challenge forms. They kept that at the district level, and it's only because of the Florida Freedom to Read project and their Freedom of Information Act requests that we got info. But he was writing my name on the challenge forms. He was saying, it's at Ridgeview High School. Julie Miller has it. Once again, Julie Miller, disgusting, talk to Julie Miller. In another article, he referenced that he was going to clean out the Clay County public school libraries, and anyone who got in his way, he was going to run over them like a dead body. So it was very disturbing, very scary. When Sheriff Cook sent sergeants to my house because I was like, what's happening here, and this is not okay, and the school board and the district were no help whatsoever, other than my principal saying, sure, you don't have to come to open house. They were like, well, basically everything that he's been very careful not to directly threaten you, so unless he starts like showing up at your house, there's nothing we can do. Meanwhile, he lives less than a mile and a half from me.
Yeah. And
Still.
I thought what was interesting too was, I mean, we heard the numbers about Clay County, which I got from Florida Freedom to Read.
Yeah.
And they are so extraordinarily high. It makes it look like the numbers from the other counties aren't, but they actually are when you compare them nationally.
Yes.
But that one man, there was sort of a strategy that you had a sense of. Was he, I think you had said that he was responsible in Clay County for the book bans. What was your sense of kind of like an organized approach to all of this?
Well, I think that, there certainly was involvement with Moms for Liberty, including the school board races that have happened over the last few years. We have had a takeover by Moms for Liberty endorsed members in our county. So all of the policy changes and things that they have done have been very pro book ban. And I will say that the word ban does get miscategorized sometimes. Young lady who was very knowledgeable up front, she said banned from stores. It's actually not come to that. It's more like books being banned from libraries. And it's not just happening in schools. We are seeing this reach into public schools and starting to go after collegiate and university libraries as well. But a book being challenged is just somebody doing a formal complaint against a book, and then whatever process that institution has, they go through it, usually have people read the book and vote, and then it's either removed, which would be banning it, or it is returned to the shelves, sometimes with restrictions.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I lost the
No,
plot
that's
there.
okay. That was interesting. Thank you. So I was curious I'd like people to hear a little bit, and you're a media specialist. What are some of the reasons that books are removed? What are some of the reasons being given? What are you hearing?
Well, I feel like there was a very strategic choice to start with some of the most inflammatory content they could find. So if you're a book talker, if you're on TikTok, which we probably aren't because I'm barely on there myself, romantasy has been a big thing over the last several years, which is a combo of fantasy and romance. And some of these get termed kind of spicy. But they've also been marketed at teens when some of them should not be marketed at teens. They are written for adults. And unfortunately, some of that ended up in the libraries because we have to rely as librarians when we're choosing books on reviews, professional reviews. And if they're not giving us enough information, then we're at the mercy of that.
Then it moved on from there to
Yes.
other types of books. What kind of books?
Exactly. So once they got the doors open with the sexual content, then from there it was, well, anything with LGBTQ plus characters, even if it's just a picture book that has two moms in a picture, like not even mentioned, like really crazy. It could be books that were about being African American, books that talked about racism, or even we have some that are just about, like picture books about black people's hair. There's one about a little girl says, "Don't touch my hair," that talks about like, let's not get our hands in our hair for the little girls, and he's challenging that. So we've seen the gamut, and like in the trailer, there's your nudity, the statues.
That was you, wasn't it?
That was me.
Yeah.
Mouse, you may be familiar with the graphic novel about the Holocaust. They said that was nudity because we have naked mice. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And you advocated, like, speaking at school board meetings and such, to try to kind of bring reason back into the conversation. What happened to you because of doing that?
Well, I mean, eventually, I think that the district administrators got tired of me pushing back. Like, I was working alongside the union. The teachers union helped me a lot with trying to get an ear for this and trying to help other people know what was going on. And so by the end of the following school year, I got an email from my principal saying I was being reassigned to teach a class I had never taught before. And it was because of, the Florida statutes and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it wasn't actually, I think you told me that if they had fired you, they could have opened themselves up to a lawsuit.
Absolutely.
So you took that to mean?
Oh, yeah, so it was absolutely a soft firing.
Yeah, okay.
They were removing me from the library. So.
And then, you mentioned a little bit earlier about, like, the books that were being removed, the groups of books, like LGBTQ themes, things about African Americans. Did you have a sense of, that I guess I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. Why do you disagree with that? There's some people that do not like this idea. What are your thoughts about these types of indoctrinating ideas? Indoctrinating ideas.
So I'm a Southern Baptist minister's daughter, and my husband actually right now is leading worship at a church at Murray Hill Church, formerly Southern Baptist, but no longer affiliated with that convention. So I know a thing or two about indoctrination. And while we have turned that word into something that it's not, and this is something that we've seen a lot of over the last several years, which is where we take terms that are not inflammatory and we make them inflammatory. And we take them and apply them to things like pornography. We used to know what that was, and now people just apply it to anything. So when it comes to indoctrination, having books on a shelf available for students, there's no way that can be considered indoctrination. If I were to tell every student who comes into the library, you must check this book out. I'm not letting you leave here until you read this one. And also there's a pamphlet in there with some information about how you too can become gay. You should become transgender. You kind of look like you would like that lifestyle. That would be one thing, but that's not happening. It's not happening anywhere. We're simply making sure that, like you mentioned, the mirrors, the windows, the sliding glass doors, it's so important that students can see themselves on the cover of books. They can read their stories or stories that are completely different from their own stories. When I read a book like The Hate U Give, I learned so much about what it is like to be a black teen in the U.S. in this day and time, and the actual just tremendous fear and danger that they face when it comes to police brutality. That's not something that I can learn just by maybe having a conversation, but I learned a lot from Angie's book.
Right. And I think sometimes people who are from marginalized groups, it's a lot safer for them to have a book than it is to, try to have a conversation with 100 different people so that they understand where you're coming from, because they don't have that perspective and that experience. Yeah.
And I think we want to just say, oh my gosh, what are they reading? This is terrible. I don't know about you. I have children. I have, they're almost 13 and 9, both boys. I would rather for them to learn about some of the more difficult subjects in life by reading about them, by something that was chosen by a professional, than by going on the internet and Googling it or asking AI. We have very strict, things on their devices to make sure that they're not able to access just Googling anything and everything or asking Alexa in our house, about anything, because we want to make sure that they come to us for those conversations and we can guide them with materials that are actually age appropriate for them. Google is not going to do that. Google does not care what age you are. They're just going to give you access to anything. So the idea that we are removing books from libraries instead of phones from pockets is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, and something I found heartbreaking that you said to me when we talked was that one of the things that surprised you about this was that when you pushed back, nobody joined you. You were alone. And I was curious to hear your sense of it now. Why do you think you were the person who pushed back? And why do you think others didn't follow?
Well, there were some in the community who did, but
Okay.
the other librarians in the county were pretty much silent.
Mm-hmm.
They would complain about it behind doors, but there was no one else who was going to go speak at a school board meeting. Nobody else who was going to go and speak at a town hall like we had at Reverend Dove's church. He's in the film. And there was a lot of fear. I even reached out to a retired media specialist who had been in the district for decades and said, this is starting to happen. Will you please come and speak at a school board meeting? Thinking she's retired, she'll come do this. And she said, my daughter is still employed with the county. I'm afraid to do that because I don't want them to take it out on her.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was clear to everybody that it was bigger. They were going to be silenced. They were silenced.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I just have this obnoxious sense of justice where when I see something that I'm like, nope, that's not right. It's like I just can't keep myself from inserting myself in it.
Yeah, you're in good company here. So I want to wrap this up, but I want to hear a bit of hope, and I'm wondering what gives you hope that this can get better?
Well, I'll say doing some traveling with the documentary, I've been able to speak to people all over the country and even some in Europe about what's been going on and hearing from them. And to finally be able to talk to people who care, who see the problem, and are interested in getting involved. That's what we need more of. Being invited to come and speak with you guys today is wonderful because it shows that there are those in the faith community who do care about what we're providing for our next generation. Because there are so many that it's politically incorrect to get involved in this sort of thing when you are part of the church. So kudos to you and thank you for that. But you mentioned voting. That is really where this is at this point, because when we're talking about our school board races, that's so important. I'm in Clay County. We have 3 of our 5 school board seats open. 2 of them, the incumbents that are running, are very much Moms for Liberty, and we're doing whatever we can to try to support the folks who are running against them.
Yeah.
I know that you are having a similar situation in Duval. I'm not sure where the race is in Nassau or St. John's, but we're having the same problems to different degrees everywhere. Get involved. Find out what platforms your school board candidates are running with. Find out who they're endorsed by. Citizens for a United blah, 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 that sort of thing, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, but also at the state level, when it comes to our senators and our representatives, they're the ones who are like writing these bills and passing these laws that are restricting books and making it more and more difficult for schools to actually have functioning school libraries.
Okay, great. And we also thank you for everything that you've done. It's hard to be one of the front runners in this battle, and you get beat up a lot. So thank you for being with us here today and sharing your message, and for everything that you have done to protect our children's right to read. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.